And brief reminder as well, when you're not speaking, just to make sure your device is on mute, especially during our guest speaker's time. So
you have to put it on mute when you're not speaking?
if you could, it would help just keep the background. And then once we do our question and answer, then obviously we can open it.
Tap your screen or move your mouse depending on what kind of a device you're on, and you'll see the microphone. It'll say mute below it. So
okay.
Yeah, that way if your phone rings by mistake or the doorbell rings, we won't hear it. Yeah.
Oh, this is so bad.
So interesting that such a cloudy day today, and it was so warm the other day. Remember in March or April, we had 2 weeks of nonstop sunshine.
I just said a voice into life.
I think our spring's been generally pretty good overall. There's been far more sunny days than not since the rains of January.
Be grateful you're not in Ontario. Be grateful you're not in Ontario. It snowed there on the weekend.
Yeah, well, moved to the West Coast for a reason.
Yeah, the East Coast too got snow.
Yeah, back home, everyone's still dealing with frost. In the meantime, my mother's pulling out, beets and Swiss chard and all that from her garden already. So
that's because she moved out here.
Yeah, exactly.
She had been in Nova Scotia. Yeah.
Did anyone see on CBC News, I think it was yesterday or the day before, the thing they did on the Hague Glacier, the Rockies and the Continental Divide? Really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the gist of that?
Just about how the glacier is melting. I posted on BC Drivers and Guides today. You'll see it. I put it on there.
It's essentially that's over the next few decades, with that melt, they're going to have to redefine the border in that area between BC and Alberta, because the hydrological divide is now actually being shown properly without a glacier on it.
Yeah, and BC is losing ground.
Yeah, and we're on the losing side of it. That's okay. I think we're on the better side of the.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not talking. You're not talking. You're not talking.
Okay.
Hey, Fishy. All right.
All right, everybody. All right.
I'm going to mute everyone's mics right now, except for Jeff and our guest speaker. Okay.
For the odd person who may not know that, and welcome to our fourth Canadian Tour Guide Association of British Columbia Zoom meeting. It's been, I think, a great idea to hold these and get to see you all and see how you're doing and talk about things. And of course, we've been fortunate enough to have some guest speakers over the last 3 weeks. And today we have Mr. Charles Gauthier, who is the CEO of the Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association. And welcome to you, Charles, this morning. Oh, Matthew, did you mute Charles' microphone?
It's okay, I've unmuted myself.
There we go.
There you are.
Yeah.
Hi there. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We see you on the media often, or from time to time. I guess not as much as Ian Tostenson. Gosh, that guy's on every day. I've been trying to get him to speak with us, so maybe you can put in a good word. But Charles, where do you hail from? Where did you grow up?
Born and raised in Winnipeg. Went to school there. Went to post-secondary as well, University of Manitoba. But wanted to move back to BC. I'd been here when I was really young, between the ages of 5 and 7. I guess those are the most impressionable years, and had family here when we were living in Winnipeg. And so we would visit every other summer. We'd travel up to BC by car to visit family that lived here. And so I made my way back here in 1990 via the Okanagan. I worked 2 years in Summerland as a community economic development officer, running their business improvement association there as well. That doesn't exist anymore. And then in 92, I arrived here in this position, and I've been here ever since. So I just clocked in 28 years in this past April.
Well, when you joined the Downtown Vancouver BIA, did you go right in as the CEO, or did you work in the office first? Or
no, I started off back then. It was called the general manager position, so that's how I started out. Had a small team of 2 other people, and over the course of the last 28 years, we've built our team out now to about 32 people. That includes our downtown safety ambassadors and our downtown clean team. So the office staff numbers 12, including myself.
well, first, just before we get into a little more of the downtown BIA, I understand you're also a singer and a musician. Tell us how you got into that, and are you in a small band or?
No, I wish. I'm not ready for prime time yet. I play the guitar and sing, but I do it mostly for my own enjoyment, for family and friends, and really it's just my way to kind of be creative and do something different other than what I do day in and day out. And it's just my way to relax and wind down at the end of a long, busy day.
Okay. Fantastic, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what the BIA is and what it does.
Yeah, so we've definitely grown our programs over the course of the last 30 years. The organization's been around since February of 1990. The way we're funded is that there's a levy on all commercial properties, and that's paid by the tenants that are in commercial buildings. In our case, that raises about $5 million annually, and we represent 90 blocks of the downtown. So roughly the Central Business District and the Downtown South area. So it includes the Granville Entertainment District, and of course, the office towers in the Central Business District. And our programs are quite varied. We have our downtown safety ambassadors. We have our downtown clean team. We have an economic development department. We have a group of people that focus on what we call placemaking. So they focus on a lot of the beautification work, banners, hanging flower baskets, the transformation of the laneways over the course of the last few years. Some people refer to it as the pink alley. Its official name is Alley-Oop. We've done the alleyway behind the Orpheum Theater. It's painted in red. And then we have a light and sound installation that's underneath the overpass. And if people walk under that, it actually becomes an instrument. So just by moving their hands and moving their body, they can activate that light and sound system. Then we have a marketing and promotions department focused on bringing people downtown, getting the word out about what our members are doing. Yeah, so that kind of captures it in broad strokes.
Jeff, you're muted.
Yeah, folks, sorry about that. Charles, what I was saying is I was so pleased when the Downtown Vancouver Ambassadors started. What year did they start and how did that come about?
Okay.
Well, just like anything else, it's learning from what other downtowns and other city organizations are doing worldwide. So we started to look at a program like that back in 1998, but it would require a significant investment by our members to do that. In other words, we needed more funding. And so we had to present that to the membership at an annual general meeting in the fall of 1999 to get that program up and running by May of 2000. So had this COVID-19 not arrived on the scene here, we would have been celebrating this month 20 years of the Downtown Ambassadors program. And it's evolved over the years. At one time, it had more of a security focus, and then it had more of a hospitality focus, and now we have more of a hybrid. So we try to hire people based on, attitude but certainly they are trained as security officers just because that's the best fit for us, and they do provide more of that service now than what they used to do a couple of years ago, where it was more hospitality focused. But we're proud that that program has been operating for 20 years.
That's a great program. So I guess I'll just go into the, how did you see 2020 shaping up? By the sound of most things, it was shaping up to be a fairly good year, I gather. Is that how you saw it for downtown?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we received a new 10-year mandate from both our members and City Council, because City Council does have to collect the funding that we receive from the commercial property owners. So back in February of 2020, which seems like a long time ago now, we were in front of council for a new 10-year mandate, and that was going to increase the amount of funding we would have available to do some exciting programs. We were looking at investing more in sponsorship of festivals and events that other organizations put on. So things like the Jazz Festival and Taiwan Festival. We were set to provide them with more funding to be able to do more in the downtown area. And then we were looking at also doing more of our own events. We have been doing for the last 2 years our downtown summer movie nights. That was happening on the front plaza of the Vancouver Art Gallery. We were looking at reintroducing that for the 3rd year this summer. We were looking at doing more in terms of our downtown safety ambassadors on our clean team. So we were looking at, lack of a better way of expressing this, but supersizing a lot of our programs to meet the challenges and some really exciting opportunities downtown. And then we got thrown this curveball, like we all have had thrown at us with COVID-19. And we had to pivot, a word that's being used a lot now, but we had to pivot what we do as an organization. So we had to be more responsive in terms of dealing with this over the course of the last 8 weeks. So with businesses being boarded up at street level, we created a partnership with the Vancouver Mural Festival and some other BIAs. And we didn't want to see those boarded up storefronts becoming places where graffiti artists can put their own stuff up there and perhaps some offensive stuff up there. So we teamed up with Vancouver Mural Fest and provided employment opportunities for artists. And as you can see, and I think you've all seen it in the media, we had a really positive response to that. I think we have over 20 of our boarded up storefronts in the DVBI area that have been painted by mural artists. And that was really positive. And then we also pivoted by providing webinars to our member businesses on how to deal with this particular issue, some financial advice, how to apply for government programs. And webinars is something we haven't done, but we didn't do the Zoom thing. So we hopped on it really quickly. And by the 2nd week of April, we were doing webinars for our member businesses on a variety of different topics. And then, of course, we've used this platform to also have member businesses talk to each other, especially retailers, about how they're going to navigate, this new normal going forward. And that's really been informative for us. There's a lot of cautious optimism that, it's going to be tough over the course of the next little while. But, many of them are looking at examples like London Drugs and other pharmacies and grocery stores in terms of how they've been able to navigate these really challenging times and adapt. And, how are we going to do social distancing within their stores? So it is, for a lot of us, it's new stuff. Last time we had anything like this would have been 1918, and a lot of us didn't live back then, weren't born back then. So we're learning a lot from each other, and we're learning to adapt.
Yeah, I was going to say, except for maybe George Bell. He's one of our regular listeners. Just kidding, George. Is that, yes, the London Drugs and the supermarkets, waiting to get in the store, and the plexiglass, and now the possibility of maybe we should wear masks and so on and so on. But to the downtown, I know a lot of our members, including myself, without those cruise ships and the border being open, we're in big trouble. So can I would imagine the local retailers anywhere need things to be somewhat back to normal as far as travel. Is that how you see it as well?
Yes, I mean, the downtown is quite diversified, and we've always benefited from that mix of tourism and hospitality sector being really strong, obviously with cruise ships and the conventions that come to our downtown and to our city. Certainly the fact that we're the largest employment center in the province with over 150,000 jobs in the downtown area, having people come to work on a regular basis is really, really important for our retailers and for our hospitality sector to survive. So that diversification has really been our strength. And, having any of them out of sync is a challenge at any given time. But having everything whacked out at one time like it had been, and it was quite swift in terms of how it occurred in mid-March, has definitely delivered a body blow to a lot of us. And I think we're all scrambling to find out, how do we maneuver this and how do we manage this over the course of the next 6 months, next year, and potentially 18 months. I mean, until a vaccine is discovered and implemented, or we get enough herd immunity in place, I think it is going to be a really challenging time. And I don't have the answers. I'm looking to a lot of others to find out how do we best, survive this over the course of the next little while.
So are you in touch with, for your members, are you in touch with Dr. Bonnie or her office to kind of get a handle on how how we might get to reopen?
I, like many of you, listen to her briefings on a regular basis. And I'm also a member of the Metro Vancouver Tourism and Hospitality Task Force that's being led by Tourism Vancouver, TIABC, and Tourism Richmond. There's bright people there, and they're regularly in touch with the ministers and they're regularly in touch with Destination BC and Destination Canada to find a way, how do we get out of this? I mean, I think we're going to see primarily locals, regional economy, provincial economy, and tourism pick up first and foremost, and then Canada encouraging people to visit their own country. And then international, I think, is a little further afield, unfortunately. Not sure how long that's going to take to bounce back. But yeah, it's definitely uncertain times for a lot of us.
Well, they were talking again on the radio with Mike Smith and Keith Baldry around 10:05 this morning about whether or not Adrian Dix, of course, has been pretty adamant about not opening the border. Washington State, of course, was one of the first and hardest hit states in the beginning of all of this. That's going to be critical. I have to admit, the last couple of days, I've seen more than a handful of Washington State plates on vehicles I live in the Falls Creek South area, but so I've been wanting to go up to one of them and saying, were you just trapped on this side of the border, or how were you able to come across? But yeah, getting the border open is going to be key, and getting flights and so on. Any thoughts on that?
On the border itself?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I'm listening to the reports as much as you are. I think it is literally potentially end of June at the earliest, is sort of what I'm hearing. I think it's also a bit of a moving target. I think the focus will be more on how do we encourage people locally within the region to come in and visit Vancouver. I'm speaking maybe parochially to begin with. Explore your own town. We are exploring an opportunity with the Vancouver Hotel Destination Association about partnering on a campaign to bring people to stay at a Vancouver hotel for 1 or 2 nights and rediscover downtown. We're literally in discussions now about how that might work. You're probably familiar that VHDA does a couple of programs throughout the year to encourage people to come to Vancouver and stay and spend their money here. So we're looking at doing that for the kind of the regional market, potentially as early as July. But that all depends on whether or not the hotels are ready to open up, and whether or not retailers and restaurants are set to go too. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, and we're kind of watching to see who's prepared to open up first and what are they doing. And people want to do it safely. Businesses want to do it safely because we don't want to falter and then having to go back to the restrictions that we've been in for the last 8 weeks.
Are you in touch with the hotel people much?
Yes.
Yes.
Primarily through the VHDA as to when they might be set and ready to go to do this kind of campaign.
So with Mr. Trudeau making these various announcements in the last week or so about helping businesses, do any of these hotels qualify? I mean, they must be hurting as well.
I'm unsure whether or not hotels would qualify for the programs. I know that the task force that I referenced a few minutes ago is working on trying to get a lot of those programs applicable to the hospitality sector. You know, there's been both positive and negative comments made about the programs that have been rolling out. For example, the commercial rent assistance program, which is not officially off the ground yet, you know, hasn't necessarily been viewed as positive by either tenants or landlords. And there's some questions as to whether or not commercial landlords are going to take advantage of those programs, and they have to be the ones to apply for the loan. So I think that there's still some room, I think, to improve those programs. And if we don't do that, I mean, we could potentially see a lot of small businesses falter over the course of the next coming weeks and coming months.
Yeah, well, for the hotels, I can imagine that they, you know, they don't just want to open a couple rooms, even to open 1 floor or 2 floors of rooms. They still need almost, well, not a complete full staff, but yeah, it must be a dicey situation for them.
Yeah, and it's also complicated by the fact that, you know, they have to have safety procedures in place as well, like the additional cleaning of the rooms. You know, there's a lot of procedures and protocols that they're going to have in place just to make their guests feel comfortable coming into their premises. The same discussions that we're having with the retailers and the restaurants, you know, how do you actually make it work so that people will perceive it to be and feel comfortable to come in?
Yeah. All right. Now, for any of our members who might have a question for Mr. Gauthier, if you could either go to the chat thing and just either put your name on the screen and say, yes, I have a question. And then that way we can go to you. Anyone right off the top have anything they'd like to ask?
Okay, hurry up. Come on.
I'm just going to check the chat screen here.
Is there, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a specific campaign that's going to be launched for like Rediscover Vancouver?
Yeah, so there's a number of business and permit associations in Vancouver that are working together on a campaign encouraging people to come back and discover the various different commercial neighborhoods. So we're in the process of finalizing that so that there'll be a common thread throughout all 22 BIs in the city. And as I mentioned earlier, we're a number of BIs on the downtown peninsula, so we're not the only BIA downtown. We're looking at participating with the Vancouver Hotel Destination Association on that campaign where people would book a room and there's some incentives that we would provide them to visit the retailers and to visit the restaurants.
So one of the more interesting things I've heard you say is that there are several other associations and groups I wasn't aware of. And so through either Tourism Vancouver, Destination BC, and yourselves, everybody's trying to talk and everyone's just trying to figure it out, like, I guess, as you said, the rest of us are.
Yes.
You know, there's probably about 60 or 70 different organizations that are participating on that Metro Vancouver Tourism and Hospitality Task Force. You know, there's a group that's focused on government relations and advocacy to try to get funding and support for the hospitalities and tourism sector. Someone you're probably familiar with, Walt Judas from TIABC, is focused on that. And then there's a group of us, and I'm on that particular working group that's focused on the recovery. And that involves, finding out when individual businesses like retailers and restaurants are planning to reopen, if they're planning to reopen at all, because there certainly are some that may make a decision not to reopen, close shop, and call it quits. And then there's a number of them that are working on campaigns. You may have seen, like, Explore BC has changed the focus, the marketing campaign that's on television and other social media. Don't do it now, wait for later. And they've pulled all their marketing campaigns from markets outside of BC proper. Of course, we don't want to encourage anyone to visit British Columbia now while we're under a soft quarantine, is how I would describe it, or a soft lockdown. So there's a lot of hardworking people that are focused on all those aspects, and that's really gratifying. I think everyone realizes how much and how important the sector is to our economy, both locally and provincially.
Have you heard any talk on the local attractions or hotels offering a discount in the beginning?
There's a lot of discussion about that. There's some strong voices about not discounting the product. I was actually on the phone with one of my board members who was looking at some opportunities in Whistler and elsewhere in the Okanagan, and he's not noticing any discounting for hotel rooms. So I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I mean, that sector needs all the help they can get, and I don't think discounting is beneficial in the long run. I think you can incentivize, like the program I've talked about with the VHDA that we're looking at doing locally. I'd prefer to do that. We've done a campaign called Take Out to Help Out to support the restaurants. And what we're encouraging people to do is go buy a meal at full price, pick it up or have it delivered. And then the BIA has offered a $10 gift card for every $20 purchased. So we did a campaign like that at the end of April, and we're looking at repeating that at the end of this month. And there are some other BIAs in the city of Vancouver that have done something similar to that. And I would put that in the category of not discounting. It's about supporting, in this case, the restaurant sector now, and then incentivizing it by providing, in our case, a $10 gift card when you can actually use it later on, or maybe go and dine in the restaurant when it's opened up.
Well, I'm surprised. Go ahead. Someone else was going to say something.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff. I had a question on that. Aren't the prices of hotels and different things like that, once things reopen, just based on supply and demand? So there's going to be a lot. I'm assuming that the demand is going to be way down. So the supply, I don't know how the supply is going to be. Hopefully, a lot of them are still open, but then the price is going to decrease, just like anywhere else in the world.
In theory, yes. And I suspect that you might see campaigns to that, but I think the individual hotels will do that, to reflect what the demand is like. But I have no inside knowledge as to whether or not that's how it's going to play out. Certainly, I've heard the occupancy right now is like at 10%, which is extremely low, as you know, especially for this time of year. So I suspect there will be some hotels that would consider that. I just don't know how widespread that will be.
Yeah, it's all very, it kind of goes with today being cloudy and glum. I heard some other talk recently this morning or yesterday about the airlines. They might in fact not sell those middle seats, but they'll have to increase the cost of the other seats to, they need to have a certain amount of money to run an airplane, as you can imagine. I'm a little surprised at what you said about maybe not tourist attractions like Flyover Canada or Capilano Suspension Bridge. Maybe at first they won't offer a discount, because I would think that might encourage the locals to come out at a little bit of a cheaper price. The average cost of going into Capilano in the summer is around $40-ish per person. So to make it a little less, to make it more of an incentive, but we'll have to see where that goes. One of our, do you deal with Rania up at the Canby Business Improvement Association? She's a tour guide from time to time, one of our members as well. Don't know if you know her. Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, I think my comment in regards to discounting and offers is, like, we've never experienced anything like this before, right? It's really going to be interesting to see, you know, how individual attractions and hotels are going to respond to it. You know, when the border opens up, is there going to be a desire for, you know, people from Washington State or Oregon, you know, to get in a car and drive up to our destination? I mean, it's so much of an unknown right now. We've never experienced anything like this. You know, we're all impacted by it, and it'll just be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, that's for sure. If I send you the odd email, or does your website put up updates from time to time so that we can keep apprised of what may or may not be coming down the pike, as it were?
Yes.
Okay, so I know Matthew can send everybody. I think Matthew already did. If you look on your chat forum there, folks, Matthew put a link to the Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association. Anyone else have any comments or questions about anything the Downtown BIA does, or anything you want to ask, Charles?
Yeah, I've got a question there, Jeff. Charles, just prior to coronavirus, what was the biggest challenge that you were having as an organization, just, you know, with the state that, you know, downtown had been with rising prices, and, you know, both on a commercial and a residential side of things?
Well, the one that pops up that would be, I think, relevant to all of you would just be the fact that we had insufficient number of hotel rooms available. And you know, obviously that was impacting our ability to attract people to this destination, and at affordable rates as well. So we were working with organizations like Tourism Vancouver to try to help expedite that process, and trying to get the city to provide you know, incentives for it to occur. And we were also working with Sonder, which I think many of you are familiar with. You know, they were trying to acquire floors of residential buildings, primarily condominium buildings that would be built going ahead in the future. So it was all about trying to increase the number of hotel rooms that would be available within the city. And then on a much broader perspective, we were trying to find a way to help expedite getting permits and licenses from the city of Vancouver for whatever people were applying for. So that was a common complaint in terms of getting, for example, tenants that were trying to do tenant improvements within commercial office buildings, how long it was taking, to restaurants that were trying to get sidewalk patios. So, you know, that will continue to be a focus of ours, is how do we help expedite that process and make it much quicker and much more simple for businesses to navigate how to do that at City Hall.
Okay, perfect.
We got a question from someone about cruise ship terminals, a second or another cruise ship terminal. I'm just curious, your thoughts on that, and if you had a preference for where it should go. My preference would be off of Sea Island and not the area near Tsawwassen Terminal, because we're going to have to deal with construction through the new bridge or tunnel that'll eventually be put there. And it's already you know, anytime going in that area, it's further away for one thing. But anyway, your thoughts on a new cruise ship facility. What, if anything, have you heard on that topic? I
haven't heard anything lately, but certainly my preference, this is not the organization preference, would be Sea Island as well. I think the connectivity there would be pretty good. You don't have to necessarily build another rail line from Tsawwassen, which I think wouldn't be in the cards for a long time. I also think it would be challenging to transfer people from that far afield if they were destined for downtown. So I just like the feel of having it at Sea Island and the connectivity with the Canada Line.
Okay, great. And someone asked me to ask you about crime in the downtown area before the COVID crisis, and the what is the BIA doing in regards to what's happening now with the things being shut down? I gather that's why a lot of the boarding went up to try and stop people from breaking in.
Yeah. So prior to COVID, we were making some gains. Certainly, it was challenging, especially property crime, shoplifting, theft from autos. Commercial B&Es were not, commercial break and enters were of concern, but they were manageable. Certainly, when we knew that downtown would be emptied out, there'd be certainly a drop in what we would call natural surveillance, with people being out and about either during the day or at night, going to the bars, going to the restaurants, going to different events. The nighttime economy, quite thriving prior to COVID-19. So we knew that with people staying at home and listening to Dr. Bonnie Henry, that there'd be less of that natural surveillance happening. And we were proactive. We actually added one overnight security patrol car, quickly added a second, and then quickly added a third because we were concerned about an increase in commercial break and enters, and that did happen. And police were able to react relatively quickly to increase their patrols and their response times. So we were able to manage that quite quickly. I mean, it took about a week or 2 weeks for that number to drop. But we did get a handle on commercial break and enters. And what we're seeing now is a return to thieves doing theft from autos. And we suspect that once retail stores open up, we'll see an increase in shoplifting again, although they'll have to wait in line before they can get into the stores, which might be a plus. I don't think they're going to have the patience to wait in line to go and steal, a $10 block of cheese from a grocery store.
All right.
So there might be an upside to the queuing from a shoplifting perspective.
Well, on that topic, someone asked me to ask you about Robson Street or Gastown, more public space, such as closing lanes of traffic, more pedestrian thoroughfares, as it were. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, so I think, well, definitely we're supportive of that. We had a call with the City of Vancouver last week, the engineering team, and we had a number of our retail and restaurants that were on that call as well. And we've had a number of inquiries for curbside lanes to be reallocated for deliveries, for queuing. You've probably seen that, like London Drugs outside of Robson Street. They take in the curb lane for queuing. And definitely, I think as we move into the next stage, we've had restaurants express interest in expanding to sidewalk space because they're going to be reduced to 50% inside their respective premises. And so we need to provide opportunities for our retailers and our restaurants to be able to thrive during this or survive during this process and then thrive after it. So there's lots of interest to do it, and we're certainly supportive of it. If it means, unfortunately, a little bit of added traffic congestion to see our street level retail and restaurants survive during this period of time, then I think we need to do it. So we're supportive.
All right, and Guler, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Last year, I did lots of walking tours in Vancouver, including Gastown, Chinatown, and walking through this east side, Hastings streets with homeless area. My question is the washrooms, the public washrooms, when you do walking tour, like 3 hours, always challenging in that area. Unless you go to a coffee place, have a break, and then we use their washroom. But if not, there's no public washroom to use. So moving forward, I think using the washrooms of those restaurants and coffee would be a lot more challenging regarding COVID and hygienic and without, staying there or buying their products, we won't be allowed. So my question is there a plan to establish more public washrooms in that area? And also the situation of the east, so 2 questions, public washrooms, and the second, the the Hastings, the East, the homeless people? Is there any plan moving forward?
Yeah, I'm not going to dodge your question about Hastings Street. Part of it is not in our district, especially the part that's in the Gastown or the Hastings Crossing area. So it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. You probably heard that the city's now relocated the people in Oppenheimer Park into hotels. And we would like that to continue to happen during this process, especially again, if the hotels are not fully occupied, the hotel owners will have to agree to that. I think that's a smart move. I mean, that's meant to be temporary until they can get permanent housing. So if there's some way that the city and BC Housing and the powers that, you know, control those levers can continue to make that happen, we would be supportive of that. And then in terms of washrooms, it will be challenging. We've had a number of our coffee shops express concerns about making those available even to their own customers during this period of time. So we've brought that forward to the city, and the city is looking at deploying a number of these washrooms that are on trailers that you might see at festivals and events. And they've done that already in certain parts of the city. So we've encouraged the city to continue to do that. And then they're looking at ensuring that community centers and libraries will be available for the general public to use. They don't want to go to those porta potties that are easy to tip over and are not well maintained. They want to ensure that whatever they provide, they have sanitizer and running water provided so people can practice good hygiene. So yeah, I would say stay tuned. I don't think that's been fully developed, but we've expressed very similar concerns that you've just expressed to the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, washrooms have been a big issue for many years. You know, if you're out and about walking downtown or even at some of the tour attraction stops, I know you're not involved with Granville Island, but I wish they had a few more public, easier access washrooms. Passengers on the tour bus don't necessarily want to use the tour bus, and of course the drivers don't want them to use it either. And you know, we're always making stops on a Vancouver city tour. The totem poles at Stanley Park, where there are washrooms. Prospect Point, not too bad there. Yeah, we get occasionally asked to stop in Gastown for photos of the steam clock, and yeah, there's nowhere in there. So I would appreciate if you could keep washrooms in the top of or somewhere on the list there. Is dealing with the current city council been a little easier than maybe a past city council? Not that I'm trying to get you to criticize City Hall, but I know sometimes I do hear people say, well, the last city council was a little more difficult, this one's easier. Any comments on that?
I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm giving you a political answer, but you know, I've survived in this job for a long time because I can be very diplomatic, maybe to a fault, being overly diplomatic. But I would say that this council that's only been around since November of 2018 are willing to do things a bit differently. And I do get the sense that they're more business friendly and willing to try things differently. And I think COVID-19 is providing an opportunity for them to do that even more so. You know, I talked about permits and licensing. It's been really challenging, and there's a desire to streamline that and make it much more efficient, perhaps putting a lot of their applications online. So we've had some great conversations with this council in terms of being more business friendly and streamlining application processes. I didn't get the sense that the previous council was willing to do so, and they had a majority. You know, Vision Vancouver had a majority on council, and they did a number of things that I would say worked in our favor for downtown, like in terms of, for example, hate them or love them, you know, bike lanes has proven to be, you know, very effective in helping the downtown grow, especially with, you know, a younger generation that is willing to cycle and walk to work and take transit more so than taking their own private vehicle. I'm in the category of using my car each and every day, and I still take advantage of using Mobi bikes when I can, if it's workable. So I think the previous council was more focused on, you know, improving that aspect of it. biking to work, walking to work, and increasing transit. And this council, I think, is much more willing to look at making it business friendly and streamlining permits and licenses.
Well, I'm a biker myself, especially during the summer. I'll walk downtown, transit downtown. Moby Bike's my own bike. I appreciate the bike lanes. Now that we've had them for 10 years or so, is the feeling amongst the downtown merchants that they're okay with them now? They realize that they also bring commuters down?
Yeah, I would say it's unanimous, but I certainly would say that, opponents of it in the past, and our organization was opposed to it as well in the early days, that I think many of them have turned around. Having said that, we still have some of our members that don't like them at all and voice that opinion. But from a DVBIA perspective, and speaking on behalf of the organization, we're definitely much more supportive of it than what we were 10, 12 years ago.
Well, I noticed on a CBC national thing last year, there were about 700 kilometers of bike lanes apparently in New York City and the area. So they're not just coming to Vancouver, they're in cities all over the world. So I would like to see more of those. You see them in a couple of areas around the SkyTrain stations. It's a metal box, and you can open the door and you put your bike in, and the whole bike is completely secure. You can't even see if there's a bike in there. I know that takes up more real estate, but I would like to see more of those. But I'm at least pleased with the amount of new additional strong bike racks, where if you are going to lock your bike up, it's a nice big thick pole or piece of steel, and that's good too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the office building owners have really adapted and adopted this. It's being driven just like in your business and any other business. What do your customers want? And their tenants, and especially the employees of those tenants, of those major employers, are saying, we need end of trip facilities for people that are cycling to work. And that's how it's being driven. A lot of the new office buildings that are under construction now will have a lot more end of trip facilities for cyclists and less parking for private vehicles.
So on that point of hearing in the news about people who are working from home, first of all, I'm curious, are you at home or in the office?
I'm back in the office. It's been just over a week. And I was actually surprised how I adapted working from home. It was a lot easier than I thought it would be. But having said that, I do miss the face-to-face interactions. I do miss my favorite restaurants and coffee shops that I can go to. I've adapted to Zoom, but I don't think it'll ever replace the face-to-face social interaction that is part of us, right, as humans. And, I think your next question, might be like, how will that impact downtown in the future? I think we'll have work from home. I think it'll be more part of what we do each and every day. But I also think that the demand for office space will continue to be strong. And I think that trend that we saw over the course of the last 10 years, where the amount of space per employee was diminishing, getting less and less, I think it's actually going to expand again. We have some building owners that I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks. They've had tenants come to them and say, we need more office space if we're going to adhere to the social distancing that we're going to have to live with for the unforeseeable future.
Well, on the point a few minutes ago about the hotel rooms, how many more hotel rooms do you think we need in the city of Vancouver if things had stayed without the C-19 issue?
I think we've lost, the numbers roughly about 1,500 hotel rooms over the course of the last few years. I don't know what that demand is going to be like going forward. I think it's a good question to ask someone else who's a little better informed about, what's going to happen over the course of the next 12 months, 18 months with that whole tourism and hospitality sector. I don't think anyone has those answers right now.
All righty. Anyone else have any questions, thoughts for Mr. Gauthier?
Yeah, I do, Jeff.
Yeah, Heather Bell, George and Heather Bell, go ahead.
It's twofold. One would be that the cruise company, when they start coming back in and trying to market themselves, they're going to be doing a focus on safety, the safety for the passengers. And I'm wondering if for the tour guides, if they set up protocol and have a main focus of safety. And this will be a safe town to come to, and people will feel more comfortable. And the second question would be, would it be an idea that someone from the Tour Guide Association be a representative and be on your brainstorming sessions, just to have a perspective from the guide position?
Yeah, those are, I think those, I'll answer the last one. I think it's a great idea to get input from as many people as possible. And again, this is something that none of us have had to deal with on this scale. And, you know, we're all learning from each other. I don't know how many Zoom calls I've been on, both just locally and nationally and internationally, about how do we navigate through this very challenging time. So I think the more input we can get from different groups, I would say that that's a good thing. And then in terms of safety, I mean, that's paramount. I mean, everyone is focused on that. You know, we're dealing with people not feeling safe, not feeling comfortable, you know, going out of their own homes. You know, we're seeing people wearing masks, gloves, sanitizers, social distancing. I think everyone, regardless of what sector you're in and what business you're in, that has to be paramount. You have to ensure that your customers are going to feel safe and comfortable coming into your business, and it's going to really be important to communicate what you're doing. We're doing that within our own organization, just to make our employees feel comfortable coming back to work. Like, what kinds of precautions have we taken within our interior office space? And then what is the building owner doing, and what are they going to be doing to make sure that people feel comfortable coming into the building?
Heather, on the coach safety thing, I did talk with the manager of Cantrail Coach. He and I are gonna produce a video on coach safety. As you know, for many years ago, we did a thing showing guides where things are on a coach in case they need it. But Mr. Gauthier, I have a wish list. We frequently deal with two aspects of the motor coach in downtown Vancouver. They're either coming into town with their own bus and they're staying downtown, and there's nowhere, there is and there isn't really along Waterfront Road for them to leave the bus overnight. Most hotels don't have the space, of course, anymore. They don't have an empty parking lot beside their building. We need somewhere not only where a coach can overnight in a safe area, the driver can take a taxi to or from, but frequently there used to be a lot more spaces for coaches to park in downtown Vancouver for an hour or two, because frequently the driver is asked to let the passengers off. They're going for a lunch or something, come back in an hour or two. The city has these 1 or 2 coach places available, but they're only supposed to be 15 minutes. Well, you know, the driver doesn't even get a chance to get off the bus and walk down the street for a coffee somewhere and walk back to his bus. So if that is something that can eventually be worked out, areas where a tour bus could sit for an hour or so, and we need a place for overnight. A Waterfront Road is okay, but you kind of need security running along there. Most of the crooks don't know how to break into a bus and don't know if there's anything in there of value. Generally, there isn't, except for perhaps the in-dash stereo, AM, FM stereo. And of course, in the overhead of the buses, there might be a VCR player, or I should say a DVD player. But yeah, they don't want to come back and find graffiti on the bus either. You know, that area that the Canada Place Pier uses at night by Crab Park, there's an area beside that where it's fenced off during the summer, and people used to be allowed to park an RV there, and it was in a secure area. There needs to be somewhere for tour coaches that are coming in and looking for a few hours to kill or overnight. So there's my wish list there.
I think that, you know, one thing you may want to explore with that is with Rogers Arena not being up and running, no events happening there. What about some of the parkades, the surface parkades that are there? Is that an opportunity, you know, to explore? I know that's not right downtown, but it provides an option. I think you'll find people will be looking for ways to potentially generate some revenue or explore some partnerships. And, you know, parking operators might be a group that you can approach to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's good. Thanks very much. Anyone else have anything? We're wrapping up. We're getting close to the top of the hour. And if no one else has anything to say, we'll excuse our guest. And I have a few other comments for the members if you like. But anyone else, any quick last questions? Or Mr. Gauthier, anything you'd like to know about us or anything on your wish list?
No, I think that the exchange of information and learning from each other is going to be really important moving forward. I mean, we're looking at what others are doing in other downtowns and other cities. And, you know, it is unprecedented. I hate using this word, but unprecedented times, uncharted territory. And, you know, we're just going to have to, you know, work together to get out of this as best we can. But more than happy to, you know, jump on another Zoom call and listen to more what your ideas and your suggestions, and having me talk and answer questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We do appreciate your time. And like I said, I've been trying to get a hold of Mr. Ian Tosson for Restaurant Biz. So if you're talking to him, say, hey, that Jeff guy, answer his calls and his emails.
Sure.
But, yeah. Thank you very, very much.
I just have one quick question, if I can.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering how much you coordinate with other business associations like New Westminster and Richmond and areas like that.
Yeah, less so with those outside of Vancouver. There is a provincial BIA association. We're members of that, and you know, I have typically my staff will jump on those calls because it's more tactical ideas and what they're working on than where I focus my efforts. But yeah, we're part of a much larger network.
Right.
But if you had any suggestions or ideas or something you wanted to talk with them about, I can certainly connect you with them.
Okay, no, I was just curious about how much you sort of coordinate stuff. That's, yeah.
Yeah, probably the coordination would happen more on the advocacy work that we're doing with government right now.
Right, yeah.
Not so much on programs, but certainly at the Vancouver level, there's a lot of that. We're in communication on a regular basis.
Well, all right then. Thank you very much. And you're welcome to stay on if you want, Charles. But otherwise, thanks so much. We will be in touch, either myself or perhaps our CTGA president or Matthew. And if we have any questions, we'll let you know. And if you think there's anything we might be interested in, you now have my email address. So we appreciate hearing from you.
Okay, I'm going to leave you then. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're quite welcome. Thanks again for spending your time with us today.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now. All right, CTGA members, Heather and George Bell sent an email out a day or two ago. I hope you all had a chance to see it. I don't have it on my screen right now. Coach safety was one of the things, and I mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. We're going to look at that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about something they saw from what George and Heather wrote? Matthew, are you trying to show us something? I see your.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up the list itself here for everyone.
Matthew, I don't see the words recording on my screen here, and somehow
it's recording. Okay,
and somehow my window today, my drop-down window, has stayed on my screen the whole time, which is actually good. Is that something you did, or did I do something and not realize I did it?
Nope, nothing I've done. So.
Okay. Can you make that a little bit bigger about the point number 1, 2, 3, and so on? Can you zoom in a little bit?
Well, while you're doing that, Matthew, we've been brainstorming with another guide, a longtime friend, very longtime friend, but he also is a coach driver with Trax. And he's done tour directing and tour guiding. And we put together kind of like a little bit of a framework as to, this would be for long haul more than anything, on how they will be setting up tracks coaches for people, and then how we would be handling the luggage, how we would be handling the keys to be delivered to the people, and then how will the hotel be handling the elevators for the groups. And we just did a massive brainstorming, and he would be more than willing to come in as not a guest, but just be part of a brainstorming session. And we could do that down the road if you like.
I think that's a great idea. Matthew, was there anything, were you able to get that email up for us?
Just 1 second,
Yeah.
readjusting things.
That was a really great effort on your part, George and Heather. That was a really good, detailed email, and I, quite a number of points. I would say that point number 1, have your own masks and gloves and sanitizer with you. Yeah, I think that's going to be key, especially if you're dealing with some bus companies that are, they're not the Tracks, they're not the Can Trail, they're not ISL. I think those companies will probably show up with extra stuff for the driver and the guide, but you want to be prepared that you're going to be stepping onto a bus that has this stuff, so you can clean down the area behind the driver, so you can take your seat and so on. Talk to point number 2. Yeah, this is those are going to be good questions. That point number 2. If you're accepting a freelance job where you're just going to step onto the bus for an hour or 2 or a couple hours for a city tour, yeah, what is the tour operator saying to people, giving people? And if they're showing up with a bus from out of town, do they know if they have that equipment, sanitizers and so on? Point 3, yeah, ask them, are they, like they'll often tell you, your tour is going to have 30 people on it or whatever. A good question to ask might be, is that only 30 people because you've limited it to that number, or 20 people? Good point. Gary Crosby was just saying that sanitizer is available at Canada Tire for 4 liters, about 4 liters for about $55. Remember, if you buy something like that, mask, gloves, sanitizer, keep the receipts. You can write that off at tax time. That's something you had to buy if you're working for either a company or for yourself. So don't, please remember that. The microphone, I was going to ask Dean Clark at Cantrail about that. What does he want to see done, if anything, in regards to you cleaning the mic? Obviously, you can't spray a microphone with some sort of a spray that go like a, you don't want that. That's a liquid going into a microphone is not a good idea. It's why you should never blow into a microphone. If you're trying to check if a microphone is working, you should talk into it, not blow or whistle into it. Any other quick comments from any of you about anything so far?
30 minutes.
Go ahead there. Otherwise, loading a coach, getting people to be 6 feet apart. I like the idea of loading the coach from the back. That's a great idea. They get on first. And then when it's time to let people off the bus, the front people get off first, and so on. And that way, I think that was a really good idea.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're loading 6 feet apart, everyone's sitting in the bus breathing in the same air. Does it really make a difference if you're loading 6 feet apart because you're breathing in the same air? And if someone has corona on the bus, everyone's going to get it.
Yeah. Does anyone know more about?
I don't see. I like just thinking about it from what I've read and seen, how the virus spreads. If you're 6 feet apart, you remain 6 feet apart, fine. But in the bus, that air is going to circulate, and if one person has it, I think that's a really fast way to spread.
If you take a look at some of the news things recently, I believe it was the New York Times had a little infographic, a little GIF on how your droplets spray out from the AC systems. It's not going to be good. You're going to have to separate, just like transit almost.
Yeah, the only way you're effectively going to do that is every passenger on the bus will have to be required to wear a mask. It's the only way it's going to work. And people are going to object to that. I know it.
But Joanne, the thing is that like with a mask, right? Unless it's an N95 mask, it doesn't really stop the spread of the virus, right?
Okay.
I think it's more to feel, I don't want to get too political or anything, but.
It doesn't stop the spread. What it does is if someone is infected, if it prevents them from transmitting it. If you're the only person wearing a mask, it won't particularly protect you. That's true.
What I looked at was, even if it's just a regular mask, it'll protect like the droplets from your mouth or saliva or things like that from going out. But from breathing, if it's not an N95 mask, it has openings on the sides.
Yes.
That's the air will still go out and infect people. So it'll prevent things like liquids, but it won't protect the air from going out from the mask because it's not air seal, right?
Yeah. The aerosol transmission. Okay, I'm a biochemist, so that's why I'm. The aerosol transmission for COVID is much lower than the droplet transmission, but there is some evidence that it does have a small amount of aerosol transmission, which makes that true. But the only way to lower any is that everyone wears a mask, and it lowers it, and it doesn't lower it at 100%. It won't, but that's the guideline right now. Yeah. And N95s but the thing with N95s is you have to be trained to wear them, and they have to be fitted to you. So.
And that's just not happening. Most people are just putting them on. They're not even shaving.
Yeah. Well, I've seen people wearing the N95s that have a strap that goes around this way and then a strap that comes around this way and the bar fitted to your nose. I've seen them turned sideways with them just putting them around their ears. So, I mean, people are just not aware of how different types of masks are supposed to be worn and what their purpose are. And that's a huge education thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, that'll be public health authorities that are going to have to start putting that out, as well as a more standardization of masks that are provided, I think.
Yeah.
Joanne used to be a paramedic. Are you still working part-time as a paramedic, Joanne?
Not right now. There isn't a requirement for as many part-time staff right now because, of course, people are canceling their holidays and that kind of thing. So there just isn't as much requirement for fill-in, but I suspect that it will go up and I will start working some part-time shifts.
All right, I have two questions for you or anyone about masks. Now there seems to be two types of masks. The level 2 blue mask you see on people, should those just be worn for the day and then discarded? And if I buy one of the other masks, which are more of a homemade mask or what have you, how often should that be washed? At the end of every day?
Yeah, the mask, as soon as the mask becomes damp or wet, it's much less effective. Washable masks, once they've dried out and sat for 48 hours or go through the wash, you can reuse them. But most of the filter masks are designed to be one use, and you really can't reuse them unless you UV light them.
Right. Well, yeah, Eddie, did you?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that I think on the other attachment from George and Heather, there was that email address for Cap Shield, which is the plexiglass that attaches to a baseball cap.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting, so I ordered one. I'll let you know what I think. I like that I'm not having something on my nose and on my face. Yeah. And I had to get some blood work done back in February, I think it was. And already the Life Lab staff were wearing those shields on visors. So of course it's not going to prevent the aerosol, as you mentioned, Joanne, but it's more about those droplets being spread if you're infected or if you have an illness.
Yeah.
So I'll keep you up to date.
Eddie, did you have a comment? Eddie, I see your face there. All right. Any other comments on the rest of the points that from the George and Heather Bell email?
I've got one here, Jeff. I think that people are going to need to look into purchasing their own microphones and or headsets to be used for these devices and such. You know, constantly passing that microphone around, even, you know, it's for a lot of people's welfare. You may want to be looking at getting your own. Generally speaking, most of them have the REIs, but increasingly you're finding a lot of them, especially on the smaller side of them, is using, you know, like Brent Jensen PAs, or more locally, the ready to talk ones that are made, and you know, I mean, they're shipped worldwide. So,
Well,
Are these ones that plug into the coach? Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
yeah.
Okay.
If your work is generally speaking on one of the very large tour buses, the 40 and 45 footer MCI Renaissance or the Prevo H3 series, they generally use the same cord. The microphone, of course, the microphone, if it's
it's gonna have to be either you have to make sure it's either a dynamic or a condenser microphone. But
yeah,
and where can you get those?
I'll put out a link here for a local guy who knows this very, very well, and you guys can ask him the specific questions. He's dealing quite a bit extensively now with the retrofitting REI systems on these buses and on these coaches. So
I think it's a good idea, carrying your own mic. I like that idea.
Yeah, generally what I was going to say is the large coach have a 4-pin microphone cord. The microphone goes into one end, but the cord at the other end that actually attaches to the bus, it needs a 4-pin.
Okay.
It could be that you could have the same microphone for a couple of different types of coaches, but you need a different cable. The cable that plugs into the wall of the bus. Generally, it's a 4-pin for those great big large coaches. We'll try and I can show you some types of that next week on our Zoom meeting next week. By the way, during the last few minutes, I tried to call the #1 air conditioning bus specialist in almost North America. His Peter. I got his voicemail, so he wasn't in. But I will talk with him and maybe get him to join us next week for a small part of the meeting, so he can tell us how the whole air conditioning on a bus works and whether or not we have something to be worried about. I'm just going to check the chat here.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yep.
Jeff, does anybody there know if you can put a cover over a microphone, such as saran wrap or something like that? Yep.
it will diminish your audio quality if you have something like that. That's, you know, anything solid is going to make it much harder to hear. The foam.
Buy a windscreen. Buy your own little windscreens for them, and that at least keeps it off of that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
They're not the windscreens, but or maybe this is what they're called. They're the foam covers that go over microphones. I have a friend that she buys them on Amazon 5 at a time, and so she always swaps them out, so she has her own clean cover.
They're also known as microphone sock, S-O-C-K, like on your feet. And I know if many of you know that around the city in a couple of locations, there's one in Surrey, one in Vancouver, or two. Long and McQuaid, they sell musical instruments and so on, rent equipment. They have a whack of microphones and
you're going to have to be very cautious with that, because you have different types of microphones. You buy the wrong microphone, a condenser versus a dynamic, and you're just going to be wasting your money. So I'm putting in the chat right now a link for everyone, and this gentleman is really knowledgeable about this. So if you are interested in purchasing your own, this is a personal recommendation. I've been using his stuff for years.
And that would be so good to have, because the one I bought from Amazon year before last, the sound was awful.
You don't want to be buying any of the ones from Amazon.
So that's very important, that we get the right information for the good microphone that we could use in several buses.
I'm just having
okay. And let's see here. Matthew, can you bring up Heather's page? There was the sheet from George, and there was the page that Heather wrote.
Yeah, 1 second here. I've got one other one to share with everyone as well from CTV.
Sure.
One from Sandy's report on the collecting your gratuity money.
Oh, yes.
Okay, here we go.
Well, does anyone know, is money more likely to be a carrier or is an envelope? I would gather it's better
It's
to
a
have.
it's a physical thing. As long as you're touching a physical thing, you know, you may end up having it spread. So here's
Make sure you
here's
wash your
Heather's.
hands afterwards. Don't touch your face.
Yeah.
Filthy lucre.
That's why they call it that.
There we go. Tour guide suggestions for post-COVID-19 by Heather Bell. Here we go.
We'll go back to Mike's. What about those wireless, this company in North Van is selling it? I mean, it's costly, but I think I've got in my own minibus, but I don't know if all the buses could change over to wireless, going to FM frequency, basically.
It is possible. That's, you know, I've been using, like I said, I actually do the beta test, full disclosure, for his new products and all that stuff, but I've been using them for 10 years. And so, yeah, they are working with the large coach manufacturers, both on wired and wireless systems, to be able to make that there. So it makes it possible for you to have your own.
And it's only a headset instead of a mic. That's what I.
No, they have wireless headsets and wired headsets and wireless and wired hand microphones as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on anything anyone has seen from the George and Heather Bell's email? There is, by the way, I don't know if anyone's thinking of starting their own sort of tour company, walking or driving or what have you, but the ITMI folks in San Francisco have a person out of Miami, Florida, who is started to run a seminar via Zoom. It's I think it's 5 or 6 weeks. It might be a little longer. And if you want more information about that, it's all the aspects of everything you would need to know about the possibility of starting up your own tour company, whether it's walking or tours by bus, van, or whatever. If you want more information, just let me know. You don't have to have been an ITMI graduate to be taking part of this. Anything else about George and Heather's email?
Just one quick question. The plastic shield as opposed to the mask, who knows does that work as well, the plastic shield? Because I think that's so much easier than the mask.
I like that idea of the plastic shield. I'd be able to get the microphone at least up. If it's the shield that just comes down and it's open here, you know, you'll be able to get a microphone still up towards your mouth without having, you know, you're not speaking through the mask and so on.
So are the plastic shields just as good as a mask? Do you know, Matthew, or does anybody know?
They're a different facet of protection. All they're going to do is physically keep things from going out or coming in at you. But, you know, a shield is not a seal. There's nothing that's going to, you know, keep you from potentially breathing in, and that it's just to keep it from being pushed out directly, you know, from your face out. So.
Okay, thanks.
Because my set is in the
Do we need the shared screen up anymore there, Jeff? Or?
I guess not. I guess we're, you know, we've been at this now an hour and 20 minutes. So
I just want to, I'll just quickly bring this up. I don't know if anybody saw CTV was talking about how sanitized travel and the extra time and extra, well, which will, you know, lead to extra costs, is going to end up, you know, no matter what, becoming a part of the reality of things, and how, you know, this can kind of tie into some of what Heather has put, you know, more time involved for, you know, check-ins and such. Obviously, as we've talked about before, insurance may or may not be one of the deciding factors in terms of how many people end up traveling. You know, obviously check-in is going to change. You know, temperature checks are one thing. If anyone's been to a T&T supermarket lately, temperature checks and masks are mandatory now. But who's going to be touching what bags and when, you know, especially when it comes to the airport and that aspect of things. So I think what a lot of the industry in general that transports large groups of people is going to have to become more familiar with are these fogging, sanitizing systems. a hydrogen peroxide fogger that's in a bus that you turn on at a certain points when everyone's off of it, or as they're talking here in this particular one with airplanes, the bridges that you go from the lounge to the plane itself become, these walk-through sanitizing foggers and such. These are just things that are going to come up if you're going to be looking at fast ways to quickly disinfect things. We're just going to have to get used to alcohol showers, I think. So.
Can I just make a comment? And this is a little bit off topic, but the other day I did a virtual tour in Scotland with these two ladies. It's called Mary's Meanders. And they did a virtual tour of Scotland. So these are two local guides who own a small tour company in Scotland, up in the Scottish Highlands. And they took us, you had to sign up for it. And it was like a Zoom format like this. And they took us on a virtual tour. And I gotta say, these ladies really reinvented themselves. There was no cost for it. However, you could do a donation or a tip, so to speak, via PayPal. But it was brilliant. It was really well done. And they had like some video stream to it, and they had all kinds of stuff. It was very well done. So for people who are looking to try and get out on your own and do your own thing, you could go and do a tour of Vancouver on your own and video yourself or take pictures, and then post it on a site and then take people on virtual tours. It was really well done.
All right, thank you for that. I've heard of that. I've heard of a couple of other people I know saying that they've been involved in a virtual tour. So very interesting. Well, next week, folks, looks like next week we're going to be able to have Gordon Price, former City of Vancouver councillor, joining us again, joining us for the first time virtually. He's come about 2 or 3 times over the years to our real meetings, and he's always informative, and we learned many great things from him. And we're looking at getting some other folks like Ian Tostenson from the Restaurant Association. He's on the media quite a lot, actually, TV news and so on. Boy, what a tough year to be in any business, really, certainly restaurants. I don't think they can make it just on locals alone. All right, unless there's any other quick comments or questions, you can always email myself or Matthew, even Gary or Marlene, if you had something that you wanted them to pass along. But otherwise, just come straight to the source, myself or Matthew. So everybody okay? And
yeah, thank you so much, Matthew and Jeff and everyone.
Thanks, Matthew and Jeff.
Yeah.
You're welcome, everyone.
Does anybody know I need to make a trip, if I can, to IKEA without looking it up? Is it open?
No, I went by there yesterday, not open.
Delivery.
So even the pay online and collect, they stopped that. So I'm not sure what's up with that.
Yeah. You can't even order online and get them to deliver.
No, you have to, you can get it delivered, but it's 6 weeks delivery is what they're saying. But I picked up a couple of things, and you pay an extra $5. They have it all delivered, ready to go out in the parking lot, but they've stopped that as well. So anyway, nice to see everyone, and take care. Bye.
Okay.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Matthew. And that was great that you were able to call up that email from George and Heather. I meant to have that ready to go or ask you to have it, but you had it, so you're the man.
I'm just a little mind reader sometimes.
If
anybody has any other particular questions, or if they want to get any technical work done on their things, send me an email. I can easily we can schedule some time and we can help you out with those sort of things. I think it would be good if anyone that's still here would learn how to raise their hand virtually within the if everyone wants to practice it within there. It might be easier for us with future guests and that to be able to manage the
so when they do that, you're the only one who sees that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
it puts it in a queue.
Yeah, it raises them up to the front, to the top of the list here, so then we can work through it. If everyone is not familiar with how to do it, just tap your screen. You should see an option that says raise hand. Everyone's able to try it.
Yeah, on my screen, you see 3 little dots and the word more, and then you tap on that, it drops the window open.
Okay, if everyone could try it. I got Charmaine doing it right now. If everyone else can take a look. Marta, excellent. Jeff, yeah.
What are 3 little dots?
Marta, there we go. Now, one of the other things that does happen with this is once you've, your hand is up, I can actually lower your hand here. So once we've gotten to your question, that sort of thing. So Eddie, Fatima, Jim, anyone else? Lisa, anyone want to try it as well?
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Take a look around, see if you can find it. It may be slightly different each one. Eddie, perfect. Gotcha.
For me, it's under participants. When you click on participants, it gives you the option to do that.
Okay, and what device are you using for
I'm
your Zoom?
on a Microsoft Windows laptop.
Okay, yeah.
How
That's the
old is
desktop version, so.
Here's I know George and Heather Bell are not on the air right now, but they always want to say hello to Trish. So, hi Trishy, can you say hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hey Trishy.
Hi Trish.
I just put it in the bed to juba 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 juba.
All right.
Okay.
That's very good.
And to you too.
That's her way of saying hi. I hope you're all well.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Anyone with any other technical questions? Well, I'm going to end the recording here now. So.
Okay, we'll all be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Yeah.
Next week.